In this video, we'll discuss 10 of the most common myths regarding food storage as part of a disaster preparedness program. And we are starting right now. Hey, what's up? John here.
Bob here. And this is Prep Busters. We help you go further faster in getting prepared for nearly any emergency or disaster situation. We also blast through the endless myths relating to disaster preparedness.
On this channel, we have weekly tips and strategy videos, as well as equipment reviews and interviews with folks who can help you in your journey to be ready. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. And hey, keep in mind that we post notes and related links in the description area, and use the comments section below to continue the conversation with you after the video is published. And your comments are important, and we do our best to respond to each and every one. When it comes to disaster or emergency preparation, it really boils down, as we've talked about in a prior video, of 8 common areas. Probably one of the higher importance levels is going to be food, or more specifically food storage. In this video, as we talked about, we're going to be covering some myths, because when it comes down to myths about emergency preparedness, food storage probably is the highest ranking as far as myths. So even though we're going to be covering 10, we're not listing them out in necessarily an order of importance or of volume. It's just that we have the 10 common myths. And starting at number 1, all I need is canned food. Well, that's actually, it's not a bad answer, but it's not the whole answer, because it really does, there's nothing wrong with canned food. Canned food is great. In any balanced food storage program, you're going to have canned food. But if that's all that you have, you're really cutting yourself short, because we're talking about a lack of vitamin C, for one, and also the volume and the weight that it takes to store the food. So it really, as we say, having a balanced food storage program is your best bet.
And with cans, food rotation takes on a whole new level of importance. And number 2, all I need is freeze-dried food. Freeze-dried food is very tasty, but you all are going to have to go into your water supply to reconstitute it.
You know, that, and it's also, if it's commercially processed freeze-dried food, are extremely high in preservatives. So again, for that reason, we like balance. And number 3, all I need is a lot of wheat. Well, again, I think on something like that, we're talking about somebody who's just watched too many old movies or something. We're not talking about living in the Stone Age, and most people, although it's not a hard skill to acquire when it comes to grinding wheat, it's one of those things, do you really need to do that? There's other ways we can store processed wheat products a lot easier. And besides that, if we have a lot of wheat, we have to have tools on hand to utilize them. And if nothing else, it comes down to all I need is a lot of wheat. Are you going to live off of bread and oatmeal? Probably not, or not at least for very long.
It's a process just to be able to prepare that. And I challenge anyone, well, not so much a challenge, but bake a loaf of bread from scratch, meaning grind the wheat berries and start that process from scratch. And let me know how that goes for you. It's a process. And number 4, all I need is a lot of MREs. John and I hear this a lot. Just stock up on MREs, which is not a bad idea, but it comes with its own set of problems and challenges.
Well, it does, and especially it's like anything else. If you were to go buy a case of MREs, I'd be interested to see how long that you lasted, even if you try to go 3 or 4 days eating the same MREs. But more importantly than that, I think people don't realize MREs are really designed for a combat soldier who's marching, losing a lot of electrolytes. So they have very high calories, and they generally very high in sodium to replace the electrolytes that have been lost. So that in and of itself, especially when we're talking about for people in general, if you have older people who are on a salt or a restricted diet, right away you can see a problem there. And for little kids, it's the same kind of a thing. And the problem where that can come down to, you can have one or two things happen when you get into a diet like that. You can either have a situation where you're constipated, or really more dangerously where you have diarrhea. And now you're talking about losing water and further electrolytes. So you just got to be careful. It makes a good part of a balanced program, but it's not the panacea or the answer that you're going to have.
And before you start entertaining the thought of MREs, I suggest going out to your local Army Navy surplus store, getting one or two meals, and trying them. Exactly experience them before you buy them.
And number 5, all I need is a lot of beans. Well, this definitely came from someone who watched a lot of Western movies, where you just have a bag of beans and some hardtack, and you put it in your saddlebag and you ride off into the desert on your horse. And kind of with the wheat, it goes very similar to that. Most people, I would argue, probably don't even know how to process dry beans. It's not as simple as just taking dry beans and throwing them into a pot of water and boiling them. And even once you do know the process and you get that worked out, you're talking the same thing. Is that all you want to eat is beans? Probably not.
And it's an art form almost to turn out a good pot of beans, so to speak. And once again, my common thread is always spices, and you want to stock up on a lot of spices. But a bean diet, strictly beans, think about that for a little bit. And number 6, once I have X months of food, I'm prepared. I've got everything I need. You really need to think that through, because you're assuming that you know how long this disaster is going to last. And nobody can tell you how long a disaster is going to last. Katrina, for instance, they thought that the government was going to move in, everything is going to be fine, and we'll be done with this problem in a week.
Well, that, and even on top of that, the other side of that is even we don't know when a disaster is going to occur. So whoever wrote this was thinking that I just bought a bunch of food, now I can put it into a closet, lock the door, and I'm good to go. But there's still maintenance of that food supply, rotating your food stocks, things of that nature. So you're only partially there. If you could throw down the Platinum American Express and buy X amounts of food, but it's still, the work is not done at that point. And number 7, I can store my food anywhere. Well, that basically might be true depending where you live. If you live in a perfect environment, a temperature-controlled environment that doesn't vary, you don't get a large variation of temperature, I guess that would be true. For the rest of us, no, that's not even close. Food storage is very temperature sensitive, especially if we want to get the full length of whatever it is that we're storing.
And different foods are different temperature sensitive. There's some foods that react violently to cold storage. There's some that react violently to warm storage. So you got to know your food and know how to store it. And number 8, I know how long my food will last. The expiration date is printed on it. Well, yes, but canned goods usually last longer than they are on the expiration date. But you do have to worry about the nutritional value of that food with the expiration date.
This is a good one. Actually, it comes back when we talked about MREs earlier. The majority of people, when they buy MREs, will buy them from a surplus store, even whether they do it on eBay, the internet, or whatever, or a local surplus Army supply store. And it'll have a date on there, and it'll even give you a chart of how long the MREs are good for, stored under certain conditions. The problem is, very rarely are you going to get them new.
And you don't know what conditions those were stored in. And once again, temperature will affect them.
Right. And that's the thing, because a lot of the federal agencies and military will actually have them in extremely temperature-controlled situations before they're put out to the field, just for that reason. So once that happens, you have that date that's printed on there really doesn't mean much to you. And number 9, it's emergency food. Doesn't really matter how it tastes. Well, again, I think that comes down to someone who has never walked the talk that they're talking. Because if you try eating the same kind of food, and especially if it's not even food that you like, It does matter. It matters significantly. As a matter of fact, we'll put a link to a video on the Urban Prepper YouTube channel where they went and did some studies. I think they did about 2 or 3 of them, where they lived off of rations, of emergency food rations, for I believe 72 hours. And I guarantee you, the guy is not a happy camper at the end of the even 48 hours. So yeah, it can be done, but it's not a fun proposition.
Yeah, you'll see his state of mind and morale decrease as time goes on. It is important. Food taste is important in that there's studies done in retirement homes, and they're sort of very bland diet, and it does affect them. It affects their mental capacity and literally their will to live. And number 10, natural disasters don't happen much around me. I don't need to store food. Well, you're taking into account that a natural disaster hasn't happened to you yet. And then who says that it can't be a man-made disaster? In today's times, it's a distinct possibility.
And so that wraps up the 10 myths regarding food storage. As I hope you can see, there's a common thread that goes through those, that the majority of these myths really probably are originated from someone who just has not either done food storage, ran a food storage program, or more importantly, hasn't lived off of a food storage program to see what the end product would be. And so that's where, again, we approach the whole thing of having a balanced program as far as if you're going to store food, you're going to store the food that you eat, your family eats, and then you're going to rotate it and you're going to try and balance it out as much as possible. And you're going to do so balancing it in a way that gives you the flexibility that it, as I said before, canned goods are heavy to transport versus freeze-dried foods, and freeze-dried foods have their shortcomings also. So it really does come down to a balanced program. And so that brings us to question of the day. And now for the question of the day, what are some of the myths relating to food storage that you might have heard about? Please post your answers in the comments section below. We look forward to starting a conversation based off of your comments. Thanks for checking out this video. Subscribe and click the bell if you are new here. And if you'd like to check out other videos on the 8 Pillars of Disaster Preparation series, click or tap the screen right there. For another video from Prep Busters, click or tap right there. Until next time, this channel is all about helping you go further faster and getting prepared for nearly any emergency or disaster situation. So keep crushing it, and we will talk soon.